Today's podcast is brought to you by StrongHeartAcademy.com, where no heart is no victory. We are also brought to you by BJJ To Go. If you want to build your game and learn jiu-jitsu, go to bjjtogo.com. Third thing we're brought to you by is Rat Bat. Got rats? Want to kill bats? Kill them with a rat bat. Fourth thing we're brought to you by is hot dog flavored water ingredients. If you want to add it to your smoothie, hot dog flavor ingredient. Okay, so this is a super short podcast. I was thinking about a character in my life when I was a kid that every Sunday I saw this person and I forgot about them, but I knew them since probably I was, a toddler all the way up to like maybe 14, something like that. So when I grew up, we went to church every day, and and when you go out of church, like everyone shakes hands at a small church I went to. I went to a really tiny church, a Mennonite church, and you would shake everyone's hand. You'd shake the pastor's hand when you leave, and then my parents would talk to people, and I would always want to leave. So, you'd walk up to them while they're talking, and then they would want you to shake the person's hand that they were talking to, an adult, and then, be polite. It was actually good. It teaches you how to talk to adults, not be afraid of adults, and how to act, shake hand properly. Well, there was this one guy that, this is in the 80s, and I grew up in the 80s, and Ronald Reagan was the president of the 80s, and he was a pretty beloved president, whatever you want to. When we look back on it, you could see all the things that weren't right, but I didn't know as a kid, like the Iran-Contra scandals, and then they were probably shipping cocaine into the inner cities, and then, saying no to drugs, but yet they were whatever. But he was well known at the time. He spoke really well. He gave you confidence in America, and it was like super. I was, even when I was a kid, patriotic, like America, yes, awesome. And even to this day, I love America. But like in the 80s, it was like I was the dude that was like, go America. Every movie was like fighting the Russians, and there was always the threat of like, nuclear holocaust with Russia, and the Russia's trying to destroy us. For people that are younger now, you hear this in the news with the Trump and the Russia and blah, 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 blah. But in the 80s, it was like, no, Russia is communist, and they want to take over the world, and they hate capitalism, and so and so. So Reagan was like the forefront of all that kind of stuff, and he did did some great things with Russia. They signed some good nuclear treaties that possibly saved the world. But anyway, going back to the original story, when we would shake these people's hands in church, they would, you would shake their hand, and that's how I learned how to shake a hand properly, not just a soft hand, not a hard hand, and you have a little kid hand, so the adults would always be way bigger hands. Well, this guy looked to me when I was a kid just like Ronald Reagan. He was old like Ronald Reagan. He was like in his 80s, but he had no hand. But what he had instead was like a hook, and like he wouldn't shake hands with his good hand, because I think that was his left hand, if I remember. And maybe he was right-handed. I don't know. I'm left-handed. Whatever reason, he would always want me to shake his friggin' claw hand. And it looked like it had like this weird wire attached to like the bicep, and like he could use some kind of muscle in here that like clamped it down, right? He would clamp it closed, usually, like this, or maybe it was like this. It was like that. That's what it was, a hook, but it also went like this. And usually it was clamped, and then he would put it out, and then you would, okay, how do I grab this thing as a kid? And that part was slightly terrifying as a kid. Like, I didn't want to shake the robot hand or the claw hand. And then sometimes he just wasn't paying attention, and it would be like open. Well, my little tiny hand, I didn't want to put it in there because I'm sure I felt like when I was a kid, had enough pressure to just snap your fingers off, and I would lose my fingers shaking this dude with the hook hands figures. He was a nice guy. He wasn't like a jerk or anything, but I also kind of feel like he got a kick out of like making me shake his claw hand. And I don't even know how he lost his arm. He could be born that way. It could be like most likely some sort of like accident, a work accident. They're Mennonites. I think they were Mennonites. They went to a Mennonite church. So they didn't probably happen during war because they're pacifists. So I doubt like he got blown off as like a patriot or something like that, you know. I mean, it's possible. A lot of times Mennonites would go to war. They'd be medics, and medics get blown up too. So you don't have a weapon. You go out there without a weapon, whatever. Kind of like Hacksaw Ridge, if you've ever seen that movie. But probably just an industrial accident, you know, not paying attention. Sleeve gets caught, crushes your arm. And anyway, I just remember this guy, and every weekend, every Sunday, I would have to shake that dude's hand. And maybe, I don't know if the other people in the church that I went to, if they felt the same way when they were kids or not, but I remember being pretty afraid. It never stopped me from shaking his hand, and I would always shake his hand. I was never disrespectful. I just wasn't disrespectful. But, you know, it kind of taught me, doing things and not being afraid of different people, and just because they're different, or like I wasn't even afraid that they're different. I was literally afraid that he was gonna cut my fingers off, like not paying attention. Anyway, he might have lost his arm not paying attention in an industrial accident. What's to say he's not paying attention, shaking my hands and cutting my fingers off? Just there you go, no more fingers. I don't know. I don't even know how he died. I just remember one day he wasn't there anymore, and that was probably 30 years ago or something like that. But I was just thinking of these weird characters in my life that I grew up with, and like I literally saw that dude once a week for like 14 years, 15 years or whatever, and had to shake his hand. And then when I got older, it wasn't a big deal, I guess, But when I was a little kid, he would bend over, and then it was like weird because I loved Ronald Reagan when I was a kid, but yet he was like Ronald Reagan without an arm and a giant weird claw hand. And I thought, you would think you would go, oh, it's like a pirate. Pirates are cool when you're a kid. You want to be a pirate, but nah, man, it was like freaky, with this claw hand. And, none of that stuff would ever like shake me now. If someone had a missing limb or whatever, like, I just assume something happened and you're just living your best life with what you got, and I'm going to shake your hand. But he forced you to shake the claw hand, and, it was probably good. I got used to, again, someone that's different than me, and also dealing with, like, unnecessary fears, like how many of us have fears that are silly? Like, there's most likely nothing's going to happen, and nothing happened. He never once was rough with me. He never once teased. I don't remember him ever teasing me. When you're in the 80s, you could do that with kids. You could tease them, terrify kids. Totally fine. But I don't even remember that. I just remember being terrified of the dude, and he was so nice and polite. Nothing weird or anything like that. But it was like Ronald Reagan with a claw hand during the years that Ronald Reagan was the man in the 80s. Anyway, I just want to share that weird story with you guys. Hope you got kind of a kick out of it. Totally true story. Grace Mennonite Church. So anyone from Grace Mennonite Church will probably... I don't even remember the guy's name either. I probably should ask my dad, hey, remember that guy looked like Ronald Reagan? And he'd probably like, He didn't even look like Ronald Reagan. He even had the hair where like he'd slick back the 1950s hair, the black, and then sometimes a strand would come down, and he would flip his head back because his arm, whatever, or then he would have to take his other hand and like go back. And then I don't remember if he ever got like a fake looking hand. It was literally just a metal hand. I think it was probably because it was more utilitarian. Like it had a hook so he can open certain doors and like he can grab certain things. You know, they probably didn't have the hands like they do now. I mean, they can do awesome stuff with prosthetics now. It's pretty sweet, actually. But anyway, this is just a weird story, and hope you enjoy it, and hope you guys have a good Christmas coming up, and God bless, and peace out.
Let me talk for just a second, help me feel that sense of rhythm. Find the meanings in our bearings and discover this position as a stage along the way. Another rung to the ladder, either stalling or you're climbing, and I'd rather be the latter. Instead of getting fatter, let the footsteps resume naturally.